Hello everyone, and welcome to my Bold and Beautiful Gossips 24 channel. I hope everyone is having a wonderful day. Before we begin, please hit the subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up. The entire world of the bold and the beautiful seemed to tilt off its axis the moment the devastating news broke. Dr. Taylor Hayes was dead. Even hours after the announcement, the truth sat like a stone inside the hearts of everybody who loved her. Ridge, Steffi, Thomas, even Brooke, who walked outside the Forrester mansion with shaking hands, whispering over and over that it couldn't be real, that Taylor could not be gone. She had survived far worse than anybody ever expected. Near-fatal shootings, car accidents, mental breakdowns, heartbreak beyond measure. She had come back from absences in foreign countries, and from missions of humanitarian work so dangerous that nobody thought she would ever return. And yet here they were again, except this time there was no homecoming, no miracle, no cliffhanger escape. Taylor Hayes was gone, and the family's shared silence was broken only by the sound of Steffi screaming into her father's chest, hot tears sliding down her face, demanding answers, demanding truth, demanding justice that nobody could even begin to explain. Because every single whisper, every uneasy glance, and every shiver of intuition pointed to just one person, Sheila Carter. In the hours following Taylor's death, the halls of Forrester Creations turned into a storm center of speculation. People who had barely spoken to Taylor suddenly remembered past conflicts. Rivals resurfaced from the shadows to offer twisted condolences, and every conversation twisted into the same chilling question. How did Taylor die? Steffi couldn't stop pacing the office floor, convinced that Sheila had finally done what the monster had always dreamed of doing, destroying her family from the inside. It wasn't that long ago that Taylor had nearly given her life to protect her daughter and grandson from Sheila's violence. It wasn't long ago that Sheila shot Steffi, nearly killed Finn, and caused so much destruction that most people believed she belonged in prison for life, but somehow she had walked free. That freedom now hovered over the Forrester family like poisonous smoke, and Steffi was suffocating in it. Liam, Ridge, Carter, Finn, and Hope all stood nearby watching her unravel because what could they say? What words would ever be enough to soothe the shock of a daughter who thought her mother would outlive every danger? Meanwhile, across town, Sheila Carter sat alone at Il Giardino, staring into a cup of untouched coffee as she listened to the news broadcast overhead. The television blared the same information on repeat. Taylor Hayes, beloved psychiatrist, humanitarian, mother, and hero, had been found dead behind a small medical office near the hospital campus. Foul play was suspected. Sheila didn't blink. Her face didn't move. To anyone passing by, she looked like a woman digesting a tragedy. But to anyone who knew her history, knew her mind, and knew her soul, the silence was terrifying. Was it guilt? Was it satisfaction? Was it shock? Nobody could tell. Deacon, drying glasses behind the bar, couldn't look directly at her. Something in the air around Sheila felt colder than the winter wind outside. Back at Forrester Creations, Rich Forrester was broken beyond recognition. His voice was hoarse, his eyes wet, and his suit jacket hung unevenly as though he had dressed without seeing himself in the mirror. Ridge had always been the tough one. The leader, the voice, the man who held the family together with determination and fire. But Taylor had always been his weakness, the woman he could never escape, the one who knew him better than anyone ever would. Whether they were lovers, co-parents, or rivals caught between destiny and heartbreak, Ridge and Taylor had always shared a connection that time and distance could never fully erase. And now she was gone. Ridge whispered her name under his breath like a prayer or a curse, leaning onto Thomas for support. He didn't want condolences, and he didn't want comfort, he wanted truth. But truth wasn't coming easily. Detectives were already on the scene, guarding the alley behind the hospital where Taylor's body was found. The chalk outline was still fresh. Bags of medical waste surrounded the area, fluttering in the wind, and overhead streetlights flickered like some cruel joke of the universe. According to the initial findings, Taylor had blunt force trauma to the back of her head, cuts across her hands as if she had fought back, and bruising on her arms from being dragged. The autopsy was pending, but one chilling fact had already slipped into the police report. Taylor had been alive for several minutes after the initial blow. She had tried to crawl toward the street. Her nails were embedded with gravel and skin fragments. The medical examiner whispered privately that the victim had been fighting to survive. Rich collapsed when he heard those words. Steffi didn't collapse. she exploded. Her rage came out in waves as she shook with fury, screaming for Sheila's arrest. Thomas stood behind her, trembling. He had always lived under the shadow of his own dark past, carrying guilt, carrying fear, carrying worry that someday he would be blamed for another death in the family. But even he couldn't deny what everyone was thinking. Sheila Carter had motive, opportunity, obsession, and history. It fit too perfectly, a little too perfectly. Meanwhile, at Brooke Logan's home, Hope sat curled on the couch, whispering that nothing in this family ever ended peacefully. She remembered how Taylor and Brooke had finally, after decades of rivalry, reached a fragile respect. They had begun to move forward as co-grandmothers to Douglas, as women who suffered and survived, as mothers who understood heartbreak. Hope had learned to admire Taylor, and now she hated herself for every time she had taken Taylor's presence for granted. Bill Spencer, usually untouchable and unshakable, made a rare appearance at Forrester. His eyes red, his voice quiet. He didn't come with cameras or reporters or aggression. He came to hold Steffi, to offer support because Taylor had once saved his life, saved his sanity, saved his soul. He whispered to Ridge that Sheila was behind it, that they all knew it, that nobody else could have done this. But Finn hesitated. He had been silent since the news dropped. Silent since he saw the footage himself. Silent since Steffi asked if he would help kill Sheila with his bare hands. It wasn't that Finn didn't care. He cared too deeply. Taylor had been a mother to him in every way that mattered. She had supported him when the truth about Sheila nearly destroyed his marriage. She had stood beside him in press conferences when people doubted whether he was fit to return to medicine. She believed in him. Fully, fiercely, unconditionally. And now she was gone. Finn couldn't deny the pain. But he could deny the assumption. Because something about Taylor's injuries didn't feel right. Something about the timing seemed artificial. Something about the entire crime scene felt organized, staged, clean in all the wrong places and dirty in all the right ones. What if this wasn't Sheila? What if someone wanted it to look like Sheila? That question made Steffi shove Finn away violently, accusing him once again of choosing Sheila over her family. Across town, Sheila walked into her apartment and closed the door quietly behind her. She stood in the dark for several minutes, staring at the wall, breathing deeply, her fingers tapping against her sides as though signaling coded messages to herself. She whispered Taylor's name under her breath like an echo. Then she looked down at her hands. They were shaking, not with fear but with shock. On her knuckles were faint smears of something dark. She walked to the sink and ran the water. For a long time she just watched it swirl away. "They'll blame me," she whispered. "They always do. They always will. Maybe this time they should." Her phone buzzed. Unknown number. She didn't answer. Back at Forrester Creations, tension could not be contained. Reporters circled the building like vultures. Liam held Hope tightly as she whispered about Douglas, how she would tell him that his grandmother was gone, how she would explain death to a child traumatized by too much loss already. Then Lieutenant Baker arrived. Steffi nearly lunged at him, demanding Sheila's arrest. Ridge slammed his fists into the conference table. Thomas paced in circles. Brooke stood silently near the window. Baker cleared his throat and announced that police had already brought in a suspect. But it wasn't Sheila. It was somebody nobody expected. Someone who had no reason, no motive, no connection. A new medical intern discovered near the crime scene covered in blood. Steffi went speechless. Thomas whispered, "No way, this feels wrong." Hope whispered, "Someone planted them." And Finn whispered the truth he had been terrified to speak aloud. Taylor was targeted by someone who knows this family better than we think. The room erupted. Voices crashed over one another like waves, each one louder, angrier, more desperate. Ridge screamed that Sheila wouldn't get away with this. Brooke insisted that the truth would surface. Liam asked if the police were sure. But Steffi did not move. For the first time since the news broke, she became still. Cold. Focused. Because in the chaos, she remembered something. Taylor had received a phone call the night before she died. Taylor had said she needed to meet someone privately. Taylor had said she couldn't tell anyone who it was, not even Steffi. And Taylor had promised she would come home right after. She never did. Outside, the sky broke into thunder. Inside, a family broke into suspicion. And in the shadows, a killer waited, watching the Forresters collapse. Was Sheila Carter the murderer? Or was Sheila just the beginning? The Bold and the Beautiful was about to enter its darkest era. One where loyalty meant nothing, truth became poison, and every secret would push one of the most powerful families on television toward war, revenge, and unthinkable revelations. Because somewhere in Los Angeles, the person who killed Taylor Hayes was still walking free, and the next victim might already be chosen. The storm outside had grown worse throughout the late evening, pushing thunder through the sky like cannon fire. The Forrester mansion lights flickered from the pressure on the power grid, but not one member of the family noticed. Every mind in the house was twisted in 1,000 directions. Taylor's death had not even been processed emotionally yet. There had been no time to grieve, no moment to breathe. Everything had moved far too quickly. The shock had barely cracked the surface of their consciousness before the questions began racing through the air. Who did this? Why? What happened in those final minutes? Inside the living room, Rich stood before the fireplace, his hand pressed against the mantel, staring into the flames as though he were trying to read Taylor's last thoughts inside the fire. His eyes were glassy, but no tears fell. They couldn't. He was beyond the ability to cry. What he felt was something different. Numbness wrapped around rage. Rage wrapped around disbelief. Disbelief wrapped around bone-deep guilt. Taylor had called him the night before she died. She had left a voicemail. It said nothing alarming, nothing unusual. Just that she wanted to see him in the morning, and that there were things she needed to talk about. And now she never would. Brooke sat silently on the sofa, the shock so heavy in her body that she could barely keep herself upright. She kept catching herself replaying small memories. Taylor laughing beside her at a family barbecue. Taylor sitting across from her in therapy encouraging her to fight for hope. Taylor standing next to her at Douglas's school events. They hadn't always been friends, but they had become allies through the strange fate that tied them to Ridge and the world around him. Brooke realized now, too late, that she respected Taylor more than she ever admitted. Steffi stood by the window staring out into the rain, her body shaking. She had not spoken in 20 minutes. She didn't look angry anymore. She looked hollow. Finn hovered behind her, wanting desperately to hold her, but knowing she would push him away again. He whispered her name, voice trembling. Steffi. She didn't turn. Then, I can't do this, she whispered. Finn swallowed. We're going to get answers. She shook her head. Answers won't bring my mother back. Behind them, Thomas paced the floor in tight circles, stopping only long enough to look at the framed family photos on the wall. There was one of Taylor holding him as a teenager. One of her smiling at his college graduation. One of her and Ridge dancing in the backyard. His breath hitched, chest tight. Whoever did this to her, he muttered. I'll make them pay. Everyone stiffened, because the words sounded less like grief and more like promise. Meanwhile, across town, the Los Angeles Police Department was moving through the night like a machine. The medical intern arrested near the scene, Evan McLean, age 24, sat in an interrogation room, shaking uncontrollably beneath the fluorescent lights. His scrubs were covered in blood. His face was streaked with dirt. And yet his voice when it came was tiny. I didn't kill her. Please, I didn't kill her. Lieutenant Baker slammed the folder on the table. Then how did Taylor Hayes's blood get on your clothing? Evan cried harder. I don't know. I found her. She was already hurt. I tried to help. Baker cut him off. Then why did you run? Evan whispered the truth nobody wanted to hear. Someone else was there. Baker froze. Evan wiped his face. I heard footsteps. Heavy, slow, and humming. Someone was humming a song. Old scratchy voice. Lullaby tune. I got scared and panicked. Baker dropped his pen. What song? Evan swallowed. Hush, little baby. The detectives exchanged glances. Because everyone in Los Angeles knew who used to sing lullabies before shootings. Sheila Carter. Back at Il Giardino, Sheila sat at the bar with her head in her hands. Deacon had locked the doors early. He kept pretending to clean, but his eyes kept drifting to Sheila's face, to the blankness in her stare, to the silent way she tapped her nails against the countertop, to the unspoken terror beneath her calm exterior. Sheila, Deacon finally whispered, taking a cautious step forward. You were near the hospital last night, weren't you? Sheila didn't answer. Deacon lowered his voice. Please tell me you didn't do this. Silence. Then Sheila looked up slowly, her eyes red. Not from crying, but from sleeplessness, adrenaline shock. What if I saw something, she whispered. Something I wasn't supposed to? Deacon blinked. Sheila leaned closer. What if someone else killed Taylor Hayes? And they're trying to frame me for it? Deacon stared. Because the thought wasn't far-fetched at all. In fact, it was terrifyingly logical. Meanwhile, Ridge left the mansion and drove through the storm to the hospital. He didn't care that it was after hours. He didn't care about the rules. He stormed straight into the morgue doors and demanded to see Taylor. Security tried to intervene, but his voice boomed with such emotional violence that nobody dared stop him. When the white sheet was pulled down from Taylor's face, Ridge broke. His knees buckled. A sound escaped his throat that did not resemble a man. It resembled an animal in pain. He leaned over her, touching her cheek, whispering, "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry." His tears fell onto her cold skin. It took him several minutes before he could even breathe again. Then he noticed something. On Taylor's right wrist, beneath the bruises, was a faint purple stamp. A club entry stamp. Ridge narrowed his eyes. Taylor had been at a nightclub the night she died. That detail changed everything. Outside the morgue, Ridge pulled out his phone and called Steffi. "Your mom wasn't killed outside the hospital," he whispered. "Someone lured her there. She was somewhere else first." Steffi choked. "Where?" "A nightclub," Ridge whispered. "She had a stamp on her wrist." Steffi's heart rate spiked. Why would Taylor be at a club? She didn't drink, she didn't party, and she certainly wasn't socializing with strangers past midnight. Thomas, listening from across the room, froze. Because he knew something everyone else didn't. Taylor had shown interest in a new patient recently. Someone from a support group for addiction recovery. Someone who had begged her not to tell anyone his name, especially Ridge. His name was Roman Pierce. And he had a record. A violent one. Thomas swallowed hard. If Roman was somehow connected to Taylor's last night alive, he had to prepare himself for the possibility that his mother had been helping someone dangerous, and that trust had cost her life. Back at Il Giardino, Sheila stood up from her chair suddenly, panic ripping through her body. "Deacon, I have to go." Deacon froze. "Where?" Sheila grabbed her purse, shaking. "To the police." "No." Sheila stopped. Deacon stepped in front of her. "Sheila, if you go in there alone, they'll bury you alive. They'll never believe a word you say." Sheila shook her head. "If I run, I look guilty. If I stay silent, I look guilty. If I breathe wrong, I look guilty. I might as well turn myself in." Deacon put his hands on her shoulders. His voice cracked. "Do you know something?" Sheila closed her eyes. A memory flickered across her mind, dark, broken, violent. She remembered walking near the hospital alley and hearing footsteps. She remembered seeing a shadow dragging something heavy across the ground. She remembered following the sound, heart-pounding, breath trapped in her chest. She remembered seeing a woman's body lying under the flickering streetlight, and she remembered running when she realized who the woman was. She saw Taylor's lifeless face. She saw blood pooling beneath her skull. And she saw someone else standing there. Someone tall. Someone wearing a black hoodie. Someone humming. But Sheila didn't see their face. "I didn't do it," she whispered. "But I saw who did." Deacon stepped back. "Who?" Sheila shook her head. "I don't know," Deacon whispered. "Then you can't go to the police." Sheila collapsed into the chair, breathing hard. Meanwhile, Steffi paced the mansion like a wild animal. The storm rattled the windows, lightning illuminating the walls in violent flashes. She tried to make sense of the nightclub detail. She tried to find reason where none existed. Why would her mother be out late? Who did she meet? Why had she not told anyone? Finn tried again to comfort her. His voice soft, trembling. "Steffi, look at me. No. Please. No. Steffi, you're not alone." She spun, eyes blazing. "Aren't I? My mother is dead and the killer is still out there, and you are defending Sheila." Finn staggered. "I'm trying to help you think clearly. My mother's blood is still on the pavement," she screamed. "Sheila should have been locked up years ago. Why do you keep giving her mercy?" "Because," Finn said through clenched teeth. "What if she didn't kill Taylor?" Steffi slapped him. Hard. "You don't say that. Not tonight." Finn touched his cheek, stunned. Steffi whispered, voice breaking. I hate Sheila. But I don't want to hate you. Then she walked away, leaving Finn alone in the hallway. At the hospital morgue, Ridge stared at the club stamp again. He photographed it. Then he texted Carter Walton. It was time to pull surveillance footage from every nightclub in Los Angeles. Hope, meanwhile, sat on her couch staring at the wall. Liam kept rubbing her shoulders, whispering comfort. But something inside Hope was cracking. She realized something horrifying. Taylor had called Hope 2 days earlier and asked if Douglas could stay the night soon. She'd sounded emotional, reflective, even final. Hope wondered if Taylor knew she was in danger. Then Hope remembered another detail, one that made her heart drop. Taylor had run into Brooke 2 weeks ago outside the Logan estate and told her something cryptic. Someone is following me. I don't want to scare anyone yet, but I can feel it. Brooke had brushed it off: stress, fatigue, paranoia. Hope whispered, oh my God, she was telling the truth. In the police station basement interrogation room, Evan McLean continued to cry. I didn't kill her, he whispered again. I swear. Lieutenant Baker leaned in. Then prove it. Tell us who was there. Evan closed his eyes. I never saw the face, but I saw the shoes. Black leather boots. Custom stitching on the left heel. Expensive. Baker stared. Black leather boots. Custom stitching. There was only one man in Los Angeles famous for custom-stitched black leather boots. Bill Spencer. And suddenly everything changed.